Okay, so MechJeb has quite a lot of stuff that it gives you when you want to take off. I'm going to use some of it but not all of it, so bring in the MechJeb tab. Of interest is the vessel info, that's always nice, and also you can look at the delta V stats, and you can look even at the surface info. Lots and lots and lots and lots of information that you can look at if you so choose. I'm going to close that one and just go for this one, the ascent guidance. Right, what does the ascent guidance do? Well, it helps you to ascend. You can either use it for information purposes, and a bit like plotting maneuvers, you can plot an ascent using the ascent path system. Or if you want to go full auto, you can choose some options to say, you know, prevent overheat, go through the stages automatically, set your path, and then click engage autopilot, and once you press space it will just do it for you. It's automated, and when it gets up there it'll even put you into a circular orbit. If that's how you want to play, that's fine, that's what you can do. What I'm going to do is turn all that stuff off, and I'm going to set the path and flight manually. So we start off with the altitude. We want to get approximately 100 kilometers. We can adjust later, but it's not a problem. We want a 0 degrees orbit inclination, which means exactly on the equatorial line. We don't want to be off at an angle to the equator. If we now say show the nav ball guidance, you will see this pink circle appears on the nav ball. Essentially, we need to keep our direction pointing towards this, and the direction of our rocket is the yellow thing that appears when we're moving. That's our velocity vector. We need to keep the yellow thing pointing in the middle of that pink thing. In a nutshell, that's what we need to do. Now we need to get the ascent path. Now the ascent path is important actually, particularly if you're running quite tight on fuel, because you need to get these settings right. The first thing you need to worry about is the start of the turn. That's the turn start altitude, this top figure here. I've set that to 12 kilometers, so this circle will remain pointing directly upwards, and at 12 kilometers you'll see it start to drift off towards the east. That basically means I need to then steer the rocket towards the east. That's as we start to make our orbital turn around Kerbal. That's going to happen at 12 kilometers. We'll still probably have the solid rocket boosters at that point, but I want to finish my altitude at around 80. Now don't forget we are heading upwards at this point, so you know the apoapsis will be way over the 100k that we're after, depending on the angle that we come in at, and the angle is controlled by this thing. So if you want to come in at quite a flat angle towards the end, so you want to start off steep, make a sharp turn, and then go quite flat, you want to be on this part here. But that will burn a lot of fuel getting you into your orbital velocity. Or you can choose to go kind of down this direction. That makes a very, very sharp turn here. That's quite hard to achieve. I find that roughly sort of 60 to 70% gives you a decent curve. That will give us a good curve and still get quite a bit of rotational velocity around Kerbal. That's what I've found anyway, but you play with this and you'll see what I mean. It's quite interesting. So anyway, we don't need to worry about that. We've got the nav ball. Okay, so the big question is, do we want to use auto SAS? I'm going to say initially no, not for the immediate takeoff. We'll engage it later, because what happens is you engage the SAS and it makes micro adjustments with the winglets, and then this whole section starts to vibrate and oscillate. Because it's all structurally intact, you know, you can vibrate itself away, but this one won't. But it's a little bit annoying, so I'm just going to not do that initially. So let's go for full throttle, press space, and initiate the takeoff. As you can see, that's quite a smooth takeoff. There's no oscillation, there's no rotation, it's lovely and smooth. Now we want full throttle, watch the overheat. I'm going to bring that back now. Once we get to about 100 meters, I'm going to throttle down to about 2/3. So what I'm doing is I'm going to let the rocket boosters take most of the strain. I'm going to engage the SAS now, and you'll see it start to wobble. You see the winglets controlling now. This thing's moving side to side. Not a great deal, but it's not exactly smooth. It's a bit weird, the SAS. It makes all these constant adjustments, and it upsets the whole rocket, to be honest. But it holds a course, which is the main thing. Now we've got to watch our altitude. Once we get up to about 12,000, that's when we're going to start seeing this move take place. Let's just get the map ready. Let's just back off. We're going to throttle down just a little bit more. I don't want to waste too much fuel during the ascent, that's the main thing. I don't want to run out of fuel before we can start to make our orbital maneuver. Okay, we're almost at 10,000 meters now. You can see the solid rockets a few thousand meters away from detaching. I'm going to turn off the SAS now because we are going to start to make a turn. Here you go. So I'm holding the D key. Now you don't want to keep the crosshair in the center of the pink circle. What you want to do is get that yellow circle in the middle. So if you have to steer past it in order to pull the yellow vector into that pink circle, and that's what you do. Okay, solid rocket boosters detach. I need to adjust a little bit more. We're not quite on target yet. You can see it's starting to rotate, so I'm going to try and rotate it back a little bit just to make it easier. There we go. It's nice and smooth. Apoapsis 50k looking good. Let's rotate back again. We've got a little bit of atmosphere left, so we can make these turns with our winglets. 65k. Let's bring up the nav ball here. Oops, we're going off course. Come on, stay there. Stay there. Let's try and stay on course. 86k. Almost at 100. I'm going to throttle down now. Try and get it roughly about 100k. That'll do. That will do. F5 to save. Always a good idea. Okay, right, now then, let's... If we look at our plane, we're quite flat, so we took off quite... I managed to keep it on the 90-degree line quite well. If it had gone off the 90-degree line, we'd be on a plane which isn't flat with the equator. Get rid of the ascent guidance, and we're now going to use another part of MechJeb, which is the maneuver planner. So we click on maneuver planner. Wonderful tool, this. What we want to do, the maneuver, is a circularize. We want to do it at the apoapsis, so we'll click on apoapsis. So circularize at the next apoapsis, create node, and bang, it creates a perfect node for us to fly at. So all we've got to do now is press R to turn on the RCS. Remember those, that's the little thrusters, and start to spin the rocket around. Now we haven't got much fuel left, but I'm gonna, if I detach the main rocket away now, then we'll be able to turn this thing around a lot more easily. But I want to use the fuel that we've got left before we do that, because those big rockets can give us quite a lot of oomph. Need to find the maneuver node before we run out of time. There it is. There it is. Okay. Slow it down. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. Oh, he doesn't want to stop. Come back. Right, we're going to estimate 30 seconds of burn, but that's a lie. Oh, it really doesn't want to turn around. Look at this. Good grief, I'm holding down the left key. Come on, come back. Come back. I'm going to start burning. Here we go. Okay. Let's try and stay on target, but we're going to run out of fuel any second. There it goes. Spacebar. Let's kill the throttle and get back on target. And back at the maneuver node, throttle up. You can see our circle is growing rapidly. Doesn't need to be bang on. The important thing is we circularize. You can always adjust it later. Throttle down. Right, where's the Perry? There it is. So just want to grow this up to close to 100k as we can. That's the important thing. Throttle down, throttle down. Okay, how does that look? It's circular, that's the important thing. 77. Okay, that's just enough to stay in orbit. Okay, let's clear that node, so click on remove all nodes. Okay, it's not a perfect orbit, but that doesn't matter. As long as it's over 70, that will mean we'll skip the atmosphere. This node here is a little bit high, and that one there is a little bit low. So we need to adjust, because what I want to do is get a 100-kilometer circular orbit. And this is where I don't mind using MechJeb to its full potential, because it can do this for us nice and easily. I'm going to show you how. So if we want to raise the periapsis up, we want to expand that out, what we have to do is go round to the apoapsis. When we're at the apoapsis, we can effect a burn which will grow the periapsis. Likewise, if we want to get the periapsis, if we want to reduce the apoapsis, we need to do it at the periapsis. Now, as soon as we're almost coming up to the periapsis, that's what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get to our lowest point, right, the periapsis, and I'm going to shrink the apoapsis down to 100k. So the way I do that is this. In the maneuver planner, you click through to the maneuver change apoapsis, because that's what we're trying to do. Then you want to set this number to whatever you want. That can be, it's going to be 100k in this case. We're going to shrink the apo down to 100k. When are we going to do it? We're going to do it at the next periapsis. Okay, so that will create the node. If we create, you can see the node. So what's happening is the maneuver says at the periapsis, we'll make a maneuver which is going to be a retro burn, which will bring the apo down. But we can do one better than that. If we click on auto warp and then click create and execute, it's going to do this maneuver for us. So make sure your RCS is on so that it can turn your aircraft around, turn your rocket around really easily, and it will automatically time warp to near the periapsis, point us in the right direction, make the burn and finish. And I'll show you that in action. It's really, really handy, this. You can of course do this manually. That's just a maneuver node. You don't need to get MechJeb to do this. I'm just showing you how. You can by all means turn yourself around, get to the periapsis and make the burn. But here we go. Create and execute. So what it's doing, first job it's doing is pointing us towards the maneuver node, and then it'll time warp around to near the periapsis. This is a really great tool for learning, actually. You can see how things are done and then go and do it yourself. Or if you're already confident, don't want to use MechJeb, fine. Just use it to plan these maneuvers. So it's slowing down, it's about to retro burn. T minus 3, 2, 1. And there you go. I think it's finished. Remove the nodes and we now have 101k apoapsis. So it's approximately 100, that'll do, 101's absolutely fine. So the next job is to bring the periapsis up. So change maneuver to change periapsis. Now the periapsis cannot be any higher than the apoapsis, okay? So you can't pull this one out any more than this one. So what we need to do is change this to 100.1. We want to do it at the next apoapsis. Come back there. So we're saying push the periapsis out when we get to the apoapsis and stop when it gets to 100.1. Create and execute. Again, it's pointing the ship around to the right direction. It's going to time warp around and it'll burn and make the move. And at that point, we're going to be in a 100k circular orbit. Let's go out of the map view because it's always nice to be able to fly over the planet like this. It's just so cool. There we go. Pointing us in the right direction. Speeding up time again. It'll only need a few seconds of burn to do this. And we've got plenty of fuel to make more maneuvers if we need to. There it goes. You see the ship move. When the thrust kicked off, the payload had just wobbled around. And it's done. Let's have a look. Okay, we now have apoapsis 101, periapsis 98. It's not ideal. We could do better than that. I'm going to tell it to do that again because it didn't do a very good job. You can see when it shook around, I think it got a little bit confused. So I'm going to get it to do that again because I want a decent orbit. I want to, you know, within a half a kilometre probably between periapsis and apoapsis. The main reason I want to get this spot on is because this is the first part of the space station. So after I start building the rest of the space station, it's going to be harder to adjust. So I may as well it's like putting the first brick down, or what the masons used to call the cornerstone. Get the cornerstone perfect. Okay, what have we got? 101, 99.9. I think that'll do. It's a pretty good orbit. The other thing you can do with this, if you need to, I don't know if you actually need to or not, just looking what kind of, we are slightly out. Can you see this? We are slightly out between the equatorial planes, so you can fix that as well if you want to. Change inclination. You can new inclination 0 degrees, this being 0 and that of course being 90. So we could say change the equatorial at the next ascending node. So if we click on that, for example, because we know the moon is at 0 degrees, the next node is the ascending node. So that's when we would change. We can create and execute, and it will make this kind of micro adjustment just to flatten our plane off against the equatorial plane. Approaching the node. T-4. And there it goes. Okay, that just did our apoapsis and periapsis just slightly, but it worked in our favour. So 100.1 and 100.1. We have got almost a perfect orbit. Let's get rid of the unset target. That's it. We are in a wonderful orbit around Kerbal. F5 to save that. Let's go and have a look at the ship. Okay, it's around the dark side, so I'm going to skip time. Let's come round to the light side, and then we'll detach this thing and have a look. Sun's about to rise. It's such a great sight, isn't it? Look at that. Wonderful sight. There we go. That'll do. Okay, so the next part in our staging process is to detach away from this bit. So let's do that. And out comes the payload. This slot should just blow apart, and this should just come out, but I think it appears to be a little bit bugged right now, so it's just given birth to it instead. Not to worry. Now this is unfortunately in orbit, so that will stick around. We will have to watch out for that. But we've got RCS on this, so we can move away if we want to. Now, we are in orbit. Let's deploy the solar panel. So right click on the panel. Right click on the other panel. What I might do in a future video is come back in a space plane with lasers on it and shoot that thing. Send some missiles at it and blow it up. And that's the solar panels deployed. If you hover over here, up at the top right there, let's just get rid of this. Let's get rid of MechJeb now. Let's just, if you hover over this, this tells you some information. So the electric charge is maxed out at 4,000 units, or 4,000 watts, assumably. And the monopropellant, which is the RCS, we've got 1,300 out of 1,500 in the tanks. That's these tanks here. If we run out of monopropellant, then we can't use the RCS system anymore to maneuver. I think we've got loads there, but if I did run out in future, I could come back with a rocket with an RCS tank and just transfer the fuel into it and fill it back up again. But I think you'd agree, that looks really nice with all the lights on it. Look at that. We'll go around the dark side in a minute. Let's turn the lights on first. So we've got these little lights on here. Let's turn them on. You can create a control group to do this kind of thing. But I'm just going to turn them on manually for now. Yay! Look at that. It does look good when that's lit, actually. So that is IOSS, the International Orbiting Squirrel Station, #1 in all of its glory. Oh, one last thing we didn't do. Right click, extend the communications dish. I think we need to spin it around. Let's spin this thing around. So you see the RCS thrusters firing now. That's using the Q and the E key. Look at that. Fabulous. Looks great with the dish on the top. There is one other thing about MechJeb you might find useful if you bring it up, and that's the Smart ASS. That does various things. Kill rot will kill my rotation. There you go. Turn it back off again, otherwise it'll waste all your RCS fuel. You can tell it point towards the prograde. Like that. You can do this on any ship, not just spaceships. Space stations, sorry. You can tell it to point towards the retrograde. You can tell it to point towards the normal plus, which means it'll line up with the equatorial plane. Like that. Don't forget to turn it off though. But basically, it just helps you to maneuver your aircraft around. Look, that's really close. Just sitting over there waiting to smash us later. I will have to do something about that. I think ideally you'd want this communication disk to be pointing down, so you would turn it around like that. Turn Smart ASS off before you make a move, otherwise it'll try and stop you from doing it. It'll fight you. There we go. The dish pointing back to the ground, of course, so we can communicate. Let's just kill that rotation. Like that. Turn it off. And we are done. The first part of the space station is now in orbit around Kerbal. How cool is that? It's brilliant. Oh, one last thing to do. Good grief. How foolish of me. It's to right click and then rename vessel. And we classify it as a station. And we can get rid of all this rubbish here. It's not the part 1 anymore. It is just the IOSS 1. Click OK. That has now been renamed. And if we go in a second, I'll show you. Let's just do it now. Let's save it right there. So, don't end your flight this time. Yeah, because you want to leave this thing orbiting. Just go straight to the Space Center. And down here, you should be able to see it. So, at the top there I've got a load of debris. But I have one space station. And you can see it in orbit now. The IOSS 1. You can see where it is. So, if you've got things in orbit all over the place, stuff on different planets, debris flying around, you'll be able to see it all from here. And you can just click on that, double click on it, and it'll take you straight to it. There you go. Wonderful stuff. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. That's shown you how to build that payload, and I've shown you the rocket that I used to put it up, and then how to fly it up using MechJeb. Check out the video description. There will be links to the ship with and without the MechJeb components. So if you don't want to use MechJeb, that's fine. Just download the one without it. And there will be links to the rocketry add-on and link to the MechJeb add-on, so that you can download all this and play along with me if you want to, or just use the rocket and my payload and just mess around and do your own thing. Kerbal's a wonderful game. It's currently, as I speak, on offer on Steam this weekend only. 33% off. I suggest you go and get it. It's absolutely brilliant. That's all for this video. In the next video I shall expand on the space station and put another component in there. I'll show you how to dock and build up the space station, because it's not easy. Until next time guys, take care and happy trekking.